Hello, fantasy folks. Week 2 is in the books. We'll be looking back at the games that have just occurred and the fantasy performances that went with them. And then we'll be looking ahead to week 3. We've got all the usual segments, projection beaters, forget about it, game tier lists, along with any news and injuries that you guys need to know about. I'm Alex Sharples. I'm joined by Alex Brindle, but not Lewis Brindle. I know we can all breathe a sigh of relief on this one. I'm not quite sure where he is, but I just pray that wherever he is, no one is listening to his fantasy football takes. I also pray that you, dear listeners, sit down, get comfy, and settle in for In the Pocket Across the Pond.
Well, Sharps, I hope you've not got a survivor pool in the NFL. Pre-season, if you don't know what one of those is, listeners, pre-season picks were kind of every week. You pick a winner of any game in the league. You pick one and you see how long into the season you go. Obviously, most people, I believe, maybe upwards of 50% of survivor pools were bust after the first week with that Bengals game. And then this week, we get thrown some curveballs like the Vikings beating the 49ers, like the Saints beating some team based in Texas. I'm just kind of struck by the 0-2 teams at the minute. We'll get into some game breakdowns at the moment, but Sharples, I'm going to read you some team names. I want you to tell me, if you don't know already, which of these teams are currently 0-2, okay?
Okay.
So, which of these are 0-2? The Bengals, the Ravens, the Jaguars, the Colts, and the Rams.
Okay. I'm fairly certain the Jags are 0-2. They lost to the Browns last week, and I don't believe they won in week 1. Who else? You said going. The Bills?
I said the Bengals, the Ravens, the Colts, and the Rams, as well as the Jags.
Rams. They were disastrous last week. Yeah, I'm pretty sure the Rams are... Oh, is it a trick question? Are they all 0-2?
It's a trick question.
Are you playing me?
It's a trick question. They're all 0-2, if you can believe it. Which is crazy. I mean, yeah. I think the Ravens is the one that I'm most kind of like shocked by. The Bengals were used to starting late. The Jaguars, we kind of saw this coming at the end of last year. I mean, Colts, it was always going to be boom bust. But the Ravens, I mean, let's get into that game, shall we? They look like they had it won. I don't know how much of the Ravens Raiders game you saw. They look like they had it won, the Ravens, and then end up losing.
Yeah, so I wasn't watching it. I was following along. I was at a restaurant actually in Spain.
Very nice.
I just managed to cobble together a bit of free public Wi-Fi, and from what I recall, having Devontae Adams on my team, I was watching along going, what on earth's going on? I think he had about 6 points up until, I want to say, very late in the third, maybe early fourth. And then all of a sudden he finishes with 26. So, yeah, I mean, I guess it was pretty, slow start for them, and then just suddenly kicked in? Or what was the story?
Kind of took the foot off the gas. A similar situation, I suppose, a little bit to that Monday night game with the Eagles and the Falcons. This idea that the team that was up feels like they're going to win. And the Ravens did this a bit too much for me last year, kind of let teams hang around, didn't put games to bed. You kind of want to see that killer instinct from them. But yeah, a bit of a disaster in the end for the Ravens, to be honest. As it was for the 49ers as well, losing to the Vikings fairly handily. I mean, Darnold with the huge bomb touchdown to Jefferson. You're a Brock Purdy fan. I'm a Brock Purdy fan. Are we concerned yet in terms of fantasy output, real life output? I mean, just what was it this week? Brock Purdy's stat line in fantasy. I know it wasn't very good. I'll pull it up while you're talking us through how you're feeling at the minute.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one with Purdy because, I mean, obviously I I was extolling the virtues of drafting him late on, he was going in the 10th and the 11th, but I had him last season in our main league, and he was an absolute stalwart in my team pretty much. It was never flashy, but it was always sort of 16 to 20 points a game, and that's like what he wanted. I mean, I wouldn't be too ready to cast him aside yet. And I mean, I'm thinking in most leagues he's probably people's bench quarterback anyway, and I think he is a really good backup to have. Obviously, if you're relying on him to start, you're probably a bit worried. I wouldn't get off him just yet. He's still got the same weapons. Obviously, the offense has been a little bit disrupted without McCaffrey, and I think people are seeing how much difference, even though he's a running back and not a wide receiver, when he's someone that's that good and the offense is obviously built around him, there's going to be disruption. But I mean, he's still got Ayuk. I know Deebo Samuel might be hurt, might be out this week. He's still got Kittle, who had a good week. So no, I want to say these first two are a bit of an anomaly. Again, you're never going to see super boom games from him, but I think he will start raising back to that average that he got to last year. I think he's a much better quarterback than he's shown these opening two games. But obviously, we can only see what's down there on the stat sheet.
Yeah, I would agree. It was 13 fantasy points, so he didn't kill you, but certainly that was his floor last year, what he's kind of scored this past week. And obviously, real life result, really disappointing for the 49ers, as it was for the Cowboys. Let it rip, mate. Let it rip. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, I certainly want your opinion on this one, so I'm happy to give you the floor. But what I will say is, it was nice to see the Saints, because obviously they come off that first week against absolute dog dirt that is the Panthers. They put up a shed load of points on them. And fair play to them for saying, we're going to stick to the game plan. I know obviously Alvin Kamara stole the show on this one with an absolutely exorbitant amount of points, but the fact that they were still willing to, throw it deep. I think Shaheed got a 70-yard touchdown at one point. It's nice that, whether they're playing someone good like the Panthers or probably the worst team in the league like the Cowboys, it's good to know that the game the game plan doesn't change. But yeah, no, Cowboys, I just don't know what's going on, because particularly last season as well, that defense that won people a lot of weeks. They'd have some weeks where they're scoring 20, 25 points, and they just not getting at the quarterback like they used to, not quite as aggressive. So yeah, and also I think offensively they're really, CD Lamb aside, it's sort of starting to think like, where else is it going to come from? Running backs haven't been amazing, and the wide receiver core aside from CD Lamb, don't know, Al. I'm a little bit worried for the Cowboys. What are you thinking?
Well, I mean, it's a stark change considering last week. Obviously, me and Lou very much were gushing about them. It was the 12 points for Prescott, and the weird thing is, you're saying that there's not really anyone else in this offense other than CD Lamb. But this was the case last year. This is why I kind of had faith coming in to this year. Prescott did have a slow fantasy start last year, I'll say that. But yeah, they just got punched in the mouth early and fell behind early and couldn't keep up. Worryingly, I suppose the most damning thing for the offense is that they couldn't seem to keep up with the Saints, regardless of how bad you want to say that the defense played last year. They would have been able to keep up with the Saints. And I suppose to add insult to injury to me, I love slagging the Saints off, clearly calling them the most boring team in the league, calling Chris Olave my fantasy bust. And I mean, Carr's going to throw one of those huge kind of arcing deep balls to Shaheed or two every game. So, I mean, there you go. If you want to take a flyer, if you need upside, pick him off your waivers. He's going to get one or two of those every game, like he did this game. Obviously, Kamara went off. Shades of Christmas Day, what was it, 2020, 2021, with the 6 touchdowns. He just seemed to keep getting into the end zone. It was pretty ridiculous, to be honest. But yeah, I mean, bizarre one for the Cowboys, having such a dominant performance against the Browns, which in itself meant that the offensive pieces didn't really need to do much. They didn't get a chance to do much in this game because it was a complete blowout. The Saints in the end winning 44-19, scored one of the most points through 2 games ever. This Saints team, as we all predicted.
Just quickly on Shaheed, because obviously, if people didn't add him last week, I reckon everyone's probably got him now. But there was, despite the fact that he's had 2 big weeks point-wise, there was quite a big difference. So the first week it was a lot of volume and he got the touchdown, whereas this week it was, I don't have it at the top of my head, but it was more like 4 receptions for 100 and the touchdown. So obviously he's cashed in on that big 70-yarder. Do we need to be worried? Because obviously you'd imagine they want to be getting Olave involved more. Are we going to see a bit of an evening out of the two between Olave and Shaheed, or is it just, he's worth a punt and he might become a bit touchdown dependent, but he's going to give you the big play every now and then?
Yeah, I mean, I think Shaheed is going to be the guy who can get that huge touchdown. 4 receptions this week, like you said, Sharps, 96 yards, a lot of which came on that huge touchdown. If I'm a Shaheed owner, if I'm looking at Shaheed, the 4 receptions, I'm probably taking that every week because one of them is going to be huge. It's the 4 receptions for Chris Olave that I'm worried about and that I want to see upped, to be honest with you. They just don't seem to be emphasising forcing Olave the ball at the moment. And it's clearly working for them what they're doing. Shaheed with the 3 receptions in the first game as well. So again, 3 receptions, 4 receptions, average of about 25 yards each time. That's what you're going to get with Shaheed. But, Chris Olave, 2 targets, 2 receptions, I should say, in the first game, 4 receptions in this game. You kind of wanting, if Shaheed's the guy that's going to be maybe the Jameson Williams, I don't know, of this team. You want Olave to be the Amon-Ra St. Brown of this team. And the targets aren't showing that at the minute. He was my bust pick before the year. I think he's a nice player. I don't think he's an upper echelon wide receiver. And clearly he's not the most explosive wide receiver on this team. But yeah, I mean, just while we're on Shaheed, another wide receiver. Are we done talking about the Cowboys Saints, by the way? Is there anything else you want to add?
Oh, just yeehaw! Now I'm done.
Another receiver in a bit of a blowout, albeit they were playing the Panthers. I'm talking about the Los Angeles Chargers, Quentin Johnston. Talking about waiver wire ads, Johnston, 2 touchdowns from the 5 receptions he had this week. Just 51 yards, though. What are you doing? Are you grabbing him? Are you leaving him? Is it a mirage? Are we believing it? It was against the Panthers.
Yeah, I mean, obviously not going to be like that week in, week out because, as you said, it is the Panthers. I would take him purely because I was kind of hoping that Lad McConkey might be a lot more involved than he is. And obviously, it's still early days yet, so we're not sure. But I think there's every possibility that Quentin Johnson could still be leading targets, even if it's not that many of them. And so if he ends up being a wide receiver 1 of what is probably not a very pass-heavy offense, if you can get him off the waivers, I think I'd take him. I don't see too much risk in it. Do you know what I mean? I think what you're getting floor-wise, and if you need to play him at a punt, he might do what he did today and get a couple of touchdowns. You know what I mean? Yeah,
I mean, 14 completions for Justin Herbert, 130 yards, 144 yards in the first game, but they're winning. But it feels awful. Yeah. It feels terrible. I mean, Justin Herbert in the right offense is a top 4 fantasy quarterback with the arm, with the kind of mobility. It feels like, I don't know, what's the best analogy? Taking, I don't know, an F1 car to an egg and spoon race, maybe? I don't know. You know what I mean? It's like, what are we doing? What are we doing here? On Johnston, I mean, I've gone for him in a couple of leagues where I've got room to take a flyer on someone. Disappointed with the Lad McConkey usage, but as you're saying, it's a low volume passing offense. The value is going to be in the running game if there's any value on this team. Dobbins with another stellar performance, 131 yards. But in terms of some of these other games that we saw, we'll get into our kind of weekly categories soon. But I mean, we had the Cardinals completely blowing out the Rams, the Jets squeaking past the Titans, squeakity squeak. The Buccaneers looking really good against the Lions. That was another shock, I suppose. Seahawks another squeakity squeak past the Patriots. Patriots are going to be a hard out this year. Commanders winning the toilet bowl against the Giants. The Browns beating a thoroughly unimpressive Jaguars. Texans and Bears is looking rough for Caleb Williams. Chiefs and Bengals, that's kind of like the I'm likening that at the minute to 2000s United versus Arsenal, I think. There's a lot of bad blood there.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of bad blood there. I mean, I think I mentioned on the podcast last week that I'm kind of out on the Bengals. I don't think they have any kind of real footing for this kind of confidence / arrogance on this Chiefs-Bengals games. 26 Chiefs, 25 Bengals. Are you surprised that the Chiefs won, and are you surprised that it was so close?
I'm not surprised that the Chiefs won because the Chiefs just seem to win even when they don't look scintillating or if people get hurt or what have you. I am surprised it was close. I think based on the Bengals Week 1 performance, I wasn't expecting it. Although I know obviously a couple of people that were missing, but yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you on the Bengals. It's almost like they won that Super Bowl a few years ago, and they're just in sort of we've won now. It's sort of cruise control mode, but they didn't do it.
I agree.
And they're sort of living off that reputation. But it's strange because when you look at the team on paper, they obviously got really nice offensive weapons. They got some defensive players that can make big plays, and Trey Hendrickson is quite a feared pass rusher. It's just I really don't know. It's almost like they're sleepwalking, like they're just not living up to what they can do. And it's been a few years now. It really is sort of do it or shut up, really, because you're right, they still are very mouthy. And to be honest, this one they probably should have won it. I know there was a couple of calls at the end of the game, like defensive pass interference that a few people are annoyed about, but they had chances to kill it off and they didn't. And you just can't give the Chiefs a chance. If you give them, they will take it. Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's a long time ago when the Bengals were in the Super Bowl now. And a lot of teams have changed kind of makeup, and they're still there with the core of that team, and they're still relatively young because they got to the Super Bowl really fast. But yeah, it's kind of put up or shut up time. I think we need to see something from them this year, absolutely. And losing this game to the Chiefs isn't going to help. But we had the Bills absolutely smashing the Dolphins. I mean, there wasn't actually much fantasy points in this game considering the score of it, and the Steelers winning the Rust Bowl. Oh, yes. I mean, not only the Broncos paying Russell Wilson to not play for them, they're actually paying him to not play for someone else. It was Justin Fields again, which is a crazy thought. But if we're thinking about our sections, our impressive victory, our not buying it win, and our worst team in the league, before we get into some fantasy stuff, give me your impressive victory this week, Sharps. There was a couple, but there was only really one winner, Al, as I'm sure you'll be aware of. It was the New Orleans Saints against the lowly Dallas Cowboys.
I'm going to go the Bucs.
No, of course.
No, I'm going to go the Saints. Obviously, it was the Saints. One more week of this, and I think the Super Bowl favourites. No. One more week of this, and they'll be eyeing up, a deep playoff run, definitely. But who is your not buying it win?
I've gone for the Steelers. I think I was quite negative on them all last year, and it's still the same things. Like they won week 1, scoring 18 points, all from field goals, and they've come and scored 13 points against this Broncos team. It's fine, they're obviously grinding the wins out. I get it, but I need to see them against a real offense, and we've not seen it yet. And fair play, if they can beat one of those teams, but they're just it's just boring, boring matches.
Yeah. I'm gonna go the Jets. We let Tennessee Titans, led by Will Levis, hang around. I don't think the offense looks particularly fluid at the minute. I think the defense is highly overrated. Based on what we've seen through 2 weeks, I would be so surprised if the Jets made the playoffs. I just think they look like a good NFL team. There's already people asking the question about Garrett Wilson. I think, unfortunately for Garrett Wilson, if his career does end up being a pretty good but not perennial Pro Bowl player, it's probably because he's kind of lingered in mediocrity a bit too long and he's maybe lost it. And that's Garrett Wilson's cue to score 1 million points next week. And who's the worst team in the league?
Hard to do it, but based on this week, I had to say the Rams. Obviously, it's Nakua's out now. Cooper Kupp's gone, but they didn't look like they had much ideas. They look very much like a team that a couple of years ago had a lot of big players, and now they don't, and they haven't replaced them. I'm not really sure where they go from here with Nakua and Kupp out. I mean, it's great for Kyron Williams owners because you'd imagine he's going to be doing everything, but can't see it translating into a lot of wins for them in real life, unfortunately.
Yeah, I would kind of, they're not my pick, but I would second that. I mean, just the amount of players that are injured for this team, it makes you wonder whether they're going to kind of pack it in and try and get something for Stafford while they can from a team which has playoff aspirations, but not necessarily a amazing quarterback. But mine's the Panthers. Of course, it's the Panthers. They scored 3 points. They're absolutely dreadful. We'll get into it, but they just benched a guy that they picked 1 overall not much more than a year ago.
I think we may need to stick an asterisk on the worst team. I know you know all about asterisks, Al. Saying worst team, asterisk, not including the Panthers, because realistically, it's going to be them every week. Like it's not even funny. I mean, it is funny because I'm laughing, but they're just terrible.
We should call it the Panthers category and just have it a given that they are the worst team. But that might confuse people. They might not know whether we're doing worst team in the league or team with the owner most likely to throw a drink on someone. That's what they might do. We're bringing it back. But fantasy-wise, let's get into the goodness. Of course, Alvin Kamara, 44 points. Sorry if you were playing against him. What a performance. Scoring for fun. On the ground mainly. Great. Devin Achane, 29, but a bit of a drop-off. Kamara's kind of like the best player by about 15 points this week. We didn't have that top end apart from that. You had Devin Achane with a nice game, 29 points. Marvin Harrison Jr., what do you think of this one, Sharps?
I mean, why couldn't we have that in week 1? That's all I want to say. Unbelievable.
Kind of some sort of miscommunication there in week 1 there must have been, because he went nuclear and he'd kind of completely blown his projection up after 2 minutes of this game. Looked like a beast. Speaking of beasts, DK Metcalf, 28 points. I mean, this Seattle offense did look pretty good in the passing game because, you had Smith and Jigba as well with a nice 23-point game. Maybe that's symptomatic of what we thought and things to come, the kind of Metcalf and Jigba duo with Lockett maybe fading into the background. Another rookie, Malik Neighbours. Whoa. Let's talk about this one, shall we? 28.7 points, 1 million targets. I think he had around 60%, if not a little bit more than 60% of the team's target share. Looked amazing. 10 receptions, more than 100 yards, touchdown. Could have probably had more, they arguably lost the game on a Neighbours drop. Unfortunately for a member in our league, I'd read the tea leaves, he hadn't, and I traded for Malik Neighbours and slotted him into my lineup at about 20 past 5 on Sunday evening. So you can imagine how unbelievable I felt watching that early window of red zone. I mean, did you catch much of Neighbours, Sharps? Have you seen many of the highlights?
Yeah, I've seen the highlights. I was following along on the ESPN app. Yeah, it's interesting because this year more than basically my philosophy was always I want the wide receiver ones, even if they're not on very good offenses. And this year has started to change it a little bit because I'm seeing some of these high-scoring offenses coming in. The wide receiver twos are looking really good. And then you got the likes of Michael Pittman, who went high and hasn't looked great, and some of these other ones. But when you get with neighbours like that, where it's just the sheer amount of volume, it's ridiculous. And the only issue I foresee is that he is the only piece in that offense worth anything. And so if they just start double coveraging him, the Giants don't have a Saquon Barkley, for example, to then punish them with. So that would be the only thing. But I mean, unbelievable. And exactly what we wanted to see from the likes of from Harrison and Neighbours. And hopefully when Odunze gets back fit, we'll see a big week from him as well. It's always nice to see the rookies go off. Yeah.
I agree. I mean, I've totally come round on Neighbours pretty much over the weekend, overnight, really. I was staunchly against drafting players in really bad offences, and this is a really bad offence with a bad quarterback, but it's the sheer amount of targets. I think 18 potentially it was this week. It's the sheer amount of targets, and what sets him apart is the talent. I mean, you can say what you want about players on bad offences, but when they're this good, when they're this talented, they have to be forced the ball, and they're going to make plays, essentially. So that's the logic with Neighbours. The Giants aren't going to win many games this year, but I think Neighbours is going to be great for fantasy just because he's so good. And like you said, it would be amazing to see Odunze as well, because those three, Neighbours, Harrison, Odunze, were really highly rated, and rightly so. But I mean, keep doing what you're doing, Daniel Jones. I don't care if you win or lose, but we like seeing Malik Neighbours get thrown the ball. Kyler Murray with a great game, 28 points. He was the QB1 on the week. James Cook started your week end off nicely on Thursday night with a 28-pointer. Nico Collins is an absolute beast. Sharples, you talked about Devontae Adams racking up all these points towards the end of the game. How about Chris Godwin, though? There's 2 weeks in a row now where he's looked very good in the slot. It's 24 points this week. The Bucks, Baker Mayfield, the cooking. What I will say is don't worry about Mike Evans. I think he'll be fine. But Chris Godwin, I mean, is this legit?
I mean, I think it is. I mean, him and Evans have always been super talented. Evans always had the edge. But yeah, the way the offense has been ticking over, I mean, what I will say is Rashad White is suffering for it because they seem to be passing a lot more than running, and even what Rashad White lived off last year was a lot of short yardage passes, little dumps off. He's not really been getting that. He certainly didn't get it last week. Only come out with 3.3 points, I think, although he was slightly injured. But yeah, if this is the way they're tilting and he's going to be throwing the ball as much as he is, then absolutely Godwin's still going to be there. And also this week coming up against the Broncos, as I found out when I picked DK Metcalf in week 1, if Pat Surtain lines up against Mike Evans, then Godwin might be in for another field day against the Broncos as well. So I think this is very much for real this week and for the rest of the season.
Yeah, interesting you say about Rashad White. They've got Bucky Irvin in the backfield, kind of nice rookie. He's kind of doing the Rashad White to Rashad White. He's doing what Rashad White did to Leonard Fournette a couple of years ago. He's just kind of like coming in for less plays but looking a bit more explosive. So watch out for that one. Calvin Ridley, though, had a really good game, 24 points. Breece Hall, 24 points. Jalen Hurts got it done for fantasy, even if it was a disappointing result for the Eagles. I've mentioned Jackson Smith from Jigba. Justin Jefferson had a huge play. That's where a lot of his 23 points came from. It was nice to see Amon-Ra St. Brown back. It was also nice to see Zay Flowers up there with 22 points. What do you think about Zay Flowers, Sharps? I know he was a player that had a lot of promise last year. We were promised a lot this year again with him and this passing offense. If Zay Flowers is your wide receiver 2 or 3, how confident are you going into, let's just say the next couple of weeks? Yeah,
I think I'm still good on him. I think this Ravens offense is going to be fine, although Lamar looks a lot readier to run than I've seen him in the past couple of years. We particularly saw that in week 1 where he was actively seeking the run and looked great doing it. But no, I think Flowers is going to be fine. There's obviously the bit of competition with Mark Andrews and now Isaiah Likely, although it wasn't his best week last week. But no, me personally, I'm fine with Zay Flowers. He's a clear wide receiver one on that team. He's got the talent, and I think this is going to be a good offense for the rest of the year. So I wouldn't be worried about Flowers personally.
Yeah, I agree. George Kittle was your tight end one on the week. Great week for Hunter Henry and for Brock Bowers. I told you so. I feel like the free agents that are probably highest up your kind of points scored board in your league for the last week were probably Sam Darnold, who's a good streaming quarterback for the rest of the season, I think, and Braylon Allen, running back for the Jets. I mean, you're tearing your hair out if you're a Breece Hall owner, because Hall, he still had a very nice game, but Allen got in the end zone. I hope this. I don't know about you, Shaw, so I hope this isn't symptomatic of things to come, because they weren't afraid to use the rookie in and around the red zone. We're not worried about Hall, are we? But I mean, Braylon Allen, a name to keep in mind, a waiver to pick up. What do you think?
I would take a punt on him. I'm still, I'm not worried about Breece Hall. What I would say about Braylon Allen is he took his chances, because neither of them they weren't like 1 yard rushes. Like he picked it up, and he made it happen. He made a play, fair enough. But I don't think it's going to take away too much from Breece Hall. I think this is one of those blips. But again, if you're desperate for running back, you're looking for someone to stream, or you need a boom bust guy to try and get you over the edge this week, why not? I don't think people will be too sold on him yet. Obviously, if he has another big week, it's probably too late next week. But I wouldn't rush too early on this one. If you can get him easily enough, it's not going to cost you too much of your fab. If that's what you're into, then yeah, why not take a punt?
Yeah, I agree. But unfortunately, we're going to have to get into the busts. Josh Allen and Keon Coleman didn't start your weekend off very nicely. Josh Allen with a 9.7 in a 31-point win, and Keon Coleman goosed you. You had a lot of people, I think, playing Keon Coleman this week in a pretty plus matchup, prospect of points, and looking like potential target hog in this offense. So I think a lot of people would have been goosed by Keon Coleman. Mahomes, 12 points. Fantasy struggles continue for the GOAT. Quite bizarre, really. I mean, this offense looks weird in general. We'll get onto the tight end there momentarily. Amari Cooper, 4.1 points. Christian Kirk, 0.9. Yeah, Sharps, just shout at me if you want to speak about one of these. Goff, 8.7. Reed, 6.6. You kind of knew Jalen Reed wasn't going to have the production without Jordan Love. Garrett Wilson, 10.2. Stafford, 6. Richardson, this is where I'm going to take a pause. Anthony Richardson, 9.98 fantasy points. We knew it was going to get rough sometimes. Yeah. That's what you get with a player of this, I suppose, profile.
Yeah.
The boom weeks are going to be as are these weeks. I still maintain that last week he played really well, and the decision making was on the whole pretty good, even with the incompletions that he had. Obviously, you had the kind of once in a generation arm talent on show with some of those throws. This week, the decision making not so much. This looked bad.
Yeah, I mean, with Richardson, obviously, throwing 3 interceptions like that, it was always gonna cost him. Would have had to really make up for it on the ground to make up for that. But I mean, it's one of them. You knew what you were getting with him when you drafted him. You were getting him in the 6th round. It was always going to be boom bust. And for me, I'm still almost treating this like his rookie year. I mean, he only played 4 games last year. He still needs a bit of time to figure it out, to get used to it at this level. Still absolutely sticking with him though, purely because he's going to have those weeks like he had in week 1 where he just absolutely obliterates it and gets 30 points. So as long as you've got a pretty steady fantasy team around him, I think you've got to keep plugging away with the upside. You just have to take these results on the chin.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that, to be honest with you. The upside can be so high that, like you're saying, Chaps, you knew what you were drafting at the end of the day. You had Mixon with 8 points. Disappointment, he got a bit banged up in the game. Pickens with 4.9. We've mentioned Mike Evans. Jamar Chase, 7.5. Worthy of the Chiefs, 4.2. Prescott, 12 points. Tyreek Hill, 6.6. Diggs, 7.7. Lou will be loving that one. Zach Moss, 5.7. Maybe don't play anyone in this Bengals backfield, I'm going to say. Unfortunately, we had that horrible bet, didn't we, Sharps, if it was going to be Moss or Brown. Can we both lose the bet?
It's looking like it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's looking like you're going to need the Bengals to be up by a few touchdowns, and then they bring in those guys just to get, and they've not been in that position yet, unfortunately. If they get it together, if you get a few more big chase plays, then hopefully. But yeah, right now, no one's really winning that one.
Yeah. Pittman had a bad game, as did this next player, and I want your opinion on this guy, Tank Dell. Another bad fantasy outing. 2.3 fantasy points. I mean, he looked unbelievable last year. The fantasy points backed that up. What's your temperature at the minute on Dell? How worried are you, I suppose? I mean, we saw Diggs' workload decrease a little bit. Obviously, not as good fantasy output. Nico Collins is clearly the dude in this team. Dell, what are you saying?
It's an interesting one. I think he's going to still emerge as the wide receiver 2 over Diggs. And so based on that, I think he's potentially a buy low candidate, and I think you will get him quite low at the minute, obviously, two bad weeks. But I think they fed Diggs early in week 1. Obviously, we know the kind of guy he is. He's a bit of a diva. He's a bit temperamental. So I think he needed that, week 1. To get those touches around the goal. And I think I would maybe try and get on him. I think you can probably get Dell at a low price, and we've seen what he can do. I thoroughly back the Houston offense and CJ Stroud. It's a tough one, but I do believe in him. I think he's going to emerge as wide receiver 2, and I think I'd be trying to sniff around and see what kind of price you could get him for. I don't know what you're thinking, Al.
Yeah, I'd probably buy low, unless I was like, a Nico Collins owner or maybe a Diggs owner and a Diggs believer. I would buy low on Dell. I mean, what we saw on the field last year was incredible. The rapport with Stroud. Maybe he just needs a couple of weeks to get going. I think they'll try and actively get him involved. So I agree, Sharps. I think the buy low on Dell's a shout there. Little new section of the pod. It's called Tight Ends Are the Worst. Pitts 5 points, Likely 4.6, Laporta 3.3, Travis Kelce 1.6 fantasy points. Sharples, I'm going to do this for Laporta and Kelce. If you were someone who picked up maybe a Brock Bowers towards the end of your draft, who's looked amazing, and you had Laporta or Kelce, would you be playing Bowers over any of those two players going forward at the moment?
I think now we've seen it with not over Laporta, but I think over Kelce you have to. I mean, it's been 2 bad weeks, and he really doesn't look that good out there. There's potentially an argument that now that Pacheco's gone down, will he sort of revert a bit more to the air game, and in that case, will he see a bit more work? But he just, he's of that age. This might be him not just declining, going off the cliff. I think Bowers is too exciting. He's had 2 good games now with a good amount of targets. I think I would, if I was a Laporta owner, I'd stick on Laporta. You probably drafted him in the 3rd, maybe the 4th. You have to stick on that. And he had a good enough week 1, but. Yeah, if I'm a Kelce owner and I've got Bowers on the bench, because realistically you're potentially 0-2 now. Because I'm in a league where I had a bit more fun with it. I drafted Mahomes and Kelce as the sort of stack, and I'm 0-2 in that one. It's been bad, so I think in that case, Bowers is just too exciting not to play.
Yeah, I think that those are wise words. I mean, maybe even if you're a Laporta owner, you try and get something for Bowers potentially. I think that could be a shout. I would play Bowers over Kelsey as well, and I'd maybe even try and ship Kelsey. Just, you know, at the end of the day, unless he's your starting tight end, if you picked up an early guy and you drafted Bowers, then now potentially is the time to get something for him if you're not going to play him. But yeah, I would play him over Kelsey. Okay, some news and injuries to get into. Unfortunately, the injury section here is pretty lengthy. News-wise, Bryce Young has been dropped. The starting Andy Dalton. I'm still not excited for anyone on this team. Enough said. Jamar Chase, no new contract, not planning in-season talks, believes he was misled by the team. I don't know on this one. I just feel like the guy's got 2 years left on his contract that he signed. I'm all for guys kind of getting paid, securing the coin. But yeah, this one's a bit like, do it at the end of this season, mate. You've got 2 years left on the contract. Come on now. Help your team out a little bit. I don't know. Injuries. Tua, the bad concussion. Will we see him on the football field again? I don't know. Definitely not for the next 4 weeks, though. He's heading to IR. AJ Brown, hamstring injury, expected to miss a couple of weeks. If you're in a league with managers as stupid as one that I'm in, and AJ Brown got dropped to the waiver wire, I hope you added him, because don't do that. Don't do that with any of these players who were mentioned. Put them on your IR if you've got an IR. Keep hold of some of them, especially names like AJ Brown and like Cooper Kupp. How about this? Just after Pacheco goes down, Cooper Kupp expected to miss an extended period of time with injury. This is a killer. Just as Kupp was looking great. Pacheco also put on IR, fractured right fibula. Minimum 6 weeks he's going to miss. I don't know if there's going to be fantasy value in terms of running backs on the team. They might bring someone in. I know that they brought Kareem Hunt in for a workout. What Kareem Hunt is like at this stage of his career, we'll see. Ferguson, knee injury, is expected to play. Amon-Ra St. Brown, lower leg, he should be good to go. He's really tough. T. Higgins is moving in a positive direction to play. Joe Mixon's ankle injury that he picked up isn't expected to be long-term. Keenan Allen missed Sunday with a heel injury. Keep monitoring that, even though I don't think he's looked very good. He gets hyper-targeted. There's a joke in there that I'm not gonna. I can't be bothered finding it, but there's a joke in there about his heel injury and about eating pizzas. I don't know. Sharples. Go on.
I was thinking of foods. The only thing I think is like a kielbasa, sort of rhymes with heel. But yeah, I was struggling with that one, so I kept quiet.
Yeah, maybe two jellied eels. The Birds playing at Wembley or Spurs Field anytime soon. I don't know.
Wagon wheels, bam.
Njoku, ankle injury, didn't play in week 2, could in week 3. Ken Walker, this was annoying. He didn't practice towards the end of last week with an oblique injury, so plan for him to miss again. Carbonnet is on it, as we'll hear in a little bit. McCaffrey went on to IR with the calf, Achilles tendonitis. Damn. This is what we get. This was Christian McCaffrey 2020, 2021. It's frustrating. If you're a McCaffrey owner, maybe look for who the Chiefs pick up. I don't know. Or hopefully you got Jordan Mason, or keep an eye on Isaac Guerrero, rookie running back for the Niners as well. Jefferson is day-to-day with his quad injury. I bet he plays, though. Evan Engram's week to week after a setback in warm-up on Sunday. He missed the game, hamstring injury. Raheem Mostert not expected to hit IR, but is ruled out. Was ruled out this past week with a chest injury, I should say. And Deebo Samuel, calf injury, expected to miss a couple of weeks. That was a horrible section. Let's start looking ahead. We're going to start like we always do. We've not even mentioned that Lewis isn't here this week, Sharps.
It's just flown so easily without him.
It's just flown so easily.
Yeah.
Because we sound so similar, I like the idea that people haven't noticed until now that Lou's not here, by the way. We are going to throw it to him for his projection beaters. He'll be telling you them from the future. Hopefully not too far in the future, though. We don't want him cheating.
Also, before we actually look into the future, I think we need to hold ourselves accountable first, Al?
We do. See, this is the thing, Sharps. I don't normally run the ship.
No.
Lewis normally runs it. I'm forgetting what order we do things. I'm jumping to conclusions.
Me and you are. We're the creative types, you know.
We're
the true fantasy analysts, you know. Like we just sprinkle a bit of magic in, but you know, Lou is the kind of buttoned up, spectacled wearing individual that does hold it together and keep us on track. So you know, excuse us, folks. It's not. It's a bit of this episode is not quite as structured as it normally would be.
Lou's the boring one. But thanks for that, Sharps.
No
ironically, it's not really me and you who really should be wanting to do this. I mean, you had an absolutely volatile week. You had 3 misses. Obviously, we've talked about Anthony Richardson. Mixon got banged up. Did Mixon?
I was going to ask you about this one. I believe he went off and stayed off, and he's got the queue next to him now. I personally was classing that as an injury one, but I can't say it for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I was trying to read up. I didn't get a chance to see this part of the game. I'm going to put it down as an injury because I know he's got a queue next to him. The injury happened in the game. I know he played a bunch of the game. However, you know, if he's gone off for injury, we saw with Devontae Adams this week that you can never know what happens kind of in garbage time or towards the end of the game. So we'll let you off with that one.
Appreciate it.
We won't let you off with Anthony Richardson's 9.8. We won't let you off with Isaiah Likely's 4.6. But you can have the Chris Godwin 24.7 Sharps. That was a good shout from you.
Thank you. Yeah, I will say the Isaiah Likely one hurts. I wasn't after another 25-pointer, but I did think 11, 12 points was very much in the realms of possibility, so I was annoyed with that one. And Godwin was magical.
Yeah, yes. Lou had a miss with Goff. It hit on Dobbins and Neighbours, though. And Kincaid had just like a nice 7.3 game. Still disappointing for where you probably drafted him or what you're expecting from him, though. Jen Daniels, 14.4. Looked like he'd have got more fantasy points than this with the running he was doing. But yeah, I mean, I suppose you're going to need him to at least throw a touchdown or get into the end zone with one of those runs. I mean, touchdown throws for rookies are really hard to come by so far. So hard to come by that not one of them's actually thrown a touchdown yet. And I mean, passing yards are down in the league in general. But I mean, I will say that Daniels looks like a pretty explosive runner. So I would be still streaming him if he's not already picked up in your league. Pacheco 16.1. I had, so that isn't too bad. He didn't kill you. He gave you a nice game. Harrison Jr. went completely off. We'll take that as a hit. And Cole Kmet nicely keeping me in the kind of the middle zone, the nothing zone. No misses yet at tight end for me, and that makes one of us. I am going to bump my projection up a little bit this week, though, Sharps. You'll be happy with me. I'm not going to play the beautiful, beautiful game for another week. We'll see if there's some wiggle room there to have a miss. But let's finally now start looking ahead. Sorry, Lou. For when Lou's going to be editing this thinking, these two are buffoons. Sorry, Lou. We're going to start looking ahead. I'll tell the man to come back in. Yes, you can come back in. We're going to start looking ahead to this week, as we always do, with...
Forget about it.
Yep, the Forget About It section of the show. These players are locked into your lineup no matter what. Don't even think about it. Just plug them in at the quarterback position. It's Josh Allen, it's Mahomes, it's Hurts, it's Jackson.
Forget about it.
Running back position, Breece Hall, Alvin Kamara, Bijan Robinson, Jonathan Taylor, Kyron Williams. Saquon Barkley as well.
Forget about it.
James Cook's creeping in there, I'll be honest with you. A-Chan is as well. I'm not ready to put Jordan Mason in there. I want to see a little bit more out of Jahmyr Gibbs as well. And as you can see, Sharps, I still have faith in Kyron Williams.
Yeah, not misplaced at
all. Wide receivers that are locked in. CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Nico Collins, Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, Jamar Chase.
Forget about it.
You have to play Chase, I'm afraid. Tight ends, McBride, Laporta.
Forget about it.
End of list. I know George Kittle's been nice, but George Kittle has these weeks. He's got a nice matchup this week, but he has these weeks, you know. I don't know what to tell you. I've been burned by George Kittle in the past. But let's get on to our projection beaters. Players that we think are going to outscore the projections by 4 or more fantasy points. If you're new to the podcast, we do this every week, and as a little treat for you all, as Sharples alluded to a few minutes ago, we're all about accountability. So when we get things wrong, which is most of the time, we'll let you know about it. But on the off chance we get something right, we like basking in the glory. Sharples, whose glory are you going to bask in at the running back position this week?
I will be basking in the glory of Zach Charbonnet, running back for the Seattle Seahawks. Zach Charbonnet projected 7.5 points. Now you may be wondering, listeners, last week you changed. Leopard had changed his spots. You were projecting high. Well, where did that get me? It got me absolutely nowhere. It got me sitting on a beach in Spain, sipping a pina colada, absolutely miserable, because I had 2 misses and probably would have had a miss from Mixon if he hadn't gone off. And it made me realise I don't really care about hits. Hits are nice, but misses, they eat away at me.
Yeah.
They eat away at me. And so, yes, the high projecting, fancy, highfalutin Sharples you knew is dead. I'm back to being stingy, and I feel really good about all these guys. So, with that monologue out of the way, Zach Charbonnet projected 7.5. Obviously, does depend on Ken Walker, who, as we mentioned before, is currently questionable with an oblique injury. The ideal scenario for me is that Walker's out fully, Charbonnet sees all the touches. But even if Walker does play, Charbonnet has seen plenty of receiving work, caught all 5 of his targets last week for 31 yards against the Patriots. And so with that, I do think he's relatively bust-free. And if Walker is out, it could be quite a big hit. Added on to the fact that Miami are giving up the 5th most points to fantasy running backs, and James Cook had an absolute field day against them last week. Feeling good about this one.
Very good, very good. I like that, Sharps. I am going to go for Travis Etienne. Can I just say that quick? Your first ever projection beater, do you remember it? Do you remember the first ever player that you recommended?
Oh my goodness me. No, could not tell you.
It was a running joke for a while because it was Jonathan Taylor. And we were like, whoa, spicy projection. It was like the year that Taylor went 1 overall. Whoa, spicy projection, Sharples. So you've come a long way is all I'm saying. You've come a long way.
Just to add on to that, that was his only hit of the season that year because he was disastrous for the rest of it. So actually was a very sensible take.
That's true. Okay, you've got me. I'm going to go Travis Etienne, projected 15 at Buffalo. Tank Bigsby's gone down, which, I mean, if you're an Etienne owner, you're kind of relieved. We were getting worried there for a moment or two. But Bigsby's down, and Buffalo is a really juicy matchup for running back so far this season. They feasted against the Bills, partly because the Bills are finding ways to stop their opponents' passing games, as you saw against both Arizona and Miami. So I think this should spell good things for Etienne on the ground. I'm calling a breakout game for this season for Travis Etienne. Let's pass it over to future Lewis. My running back projection beater this week, lads, is Tony Pollard. The Tennessee Titans projected a nice round 15. Tajay Spears, he's injured, he's banged up. And even so, Tony Pollard, he's been the clear back in Tennessee. And he's been decent. He has been decent. He's been a nice value for fantasy football so far. Been heavily involved in the passing game. 10 targets already through 2 games. And this week, the Titans play Green Bay, who, you know, on the surface might seem like an overall decent defense, but they've been pretty bad against the run. When I say pretty bad, I mean they've given up the most fantasy points to running backs over the past 2 weeks. I'm plugging Tony Pollard and he's going to be utilised. I think there's going to be scoring opportunities in this one. I think it's a high projection, but I think he can beat it. Thanks for that, Lou. Let's do wide receivers next, Sharples. Who have you got?
So this one's sort of following along from the Charbonnet mold, really. I've gone for Jameson Williams, wide receiver of the Lions, projected 13.6. Similar to Charbonnet, because I think he's got a relatively safe floor with the potential to be a big hit. Over the last 2 games, he's had 20 targets, and he's coming up against the Cardinals team that's given up the 3rd most yards per catch this year. So it should be a recipe for a good week. He's even had a little bit of rushing work both games, which is always nice to see from your wide receiver. And I do think this game could be a bit of a shootout with potentially 2 good offenses going at each other. Added into the fact that Amon-Ra's questionable, although I do think he will play and he's expected to play. But if he is out, then Williams could absolutely be drowning in targets this week. So, gone for Williams.
Good show. I think it's a good gamble to make. You want plays in that game. I'm going to go Malik Neighbours. I think this is one of the last times we'll be able to choose him on this segment. Projected just the 14.7 against Cleveland. I mean, he's going to get more than 14 targets, so he's bound to get more than 14 fantasy points. Don't think too hard about this one. I've mentioned already I was wrong in the off-season, and I went out and got him because I'm not too proud to own up to my mistakes, especially when it comes to having players as talented as Malik Neighbours on your fantasy teams. Over 60% target share last week for the Giants. I think he could be matchup proof. Insanely talented, 14.7, should be light work against the Cleveland Browns team that the defense isn't looking what it was last year. Let's get tight end out of the way, Sharples. Oh, actually, sorry. Future Lewis is tapping me on the shoulder and saying, remember me? Remember me? I'll throw it over to Future Lou. Wide receiver, guys, I'm going Brandon Ayuk, projected 17.1. I'm really shooting for the stars with the projections this week. It's a bold one, Brandon Ayuk. He's got to be one of the best wide receivers on the week to make this a hit. But I think he will be. Otherwise I wouldn't be doing this. Christian McCaffrey's out. Deebo Samuel is now out. I think Ayuk and his $120 million deal need to step up. This is against the Rams. They've got injuries themselves, so sure, there could be an argument that they might not be able to keep up, but I do have faith in Sean McVay that he's going to work with the elements that he has on that offense and keep up and make it difficult for the 49ers. These always a pretty interesting matchup between Shanahan and McVay. So I've got faith that this is going to be a decent enough matchup. And I do think that it's time for Brandon Ayuk to step up, really. He is sort of the key difference maker on that offense now. And he needs to start earning that money, I think. So, yeah, I'm going Brandon Ayuk for this is the week that he wakes up. Okay, thanks for that, Lou. Tight end, who have you got?
Tight end this week. So, people are going to think, just because I'm back into my stingy phase, I've picked this one. And it is true. I have picked him because he's got a measly projection and I want to avoid a bust. But I do think that Jonnu Smith, tight end for the Miami Dolphins, projected 5.2 points this week, will have upside. And the next couple of weeks while Tua is out, we don't know how long Tua is going to be out for. Potentially looking at anywhere between 2 and 4 weeks. And Skylar Thompson, who came in to replace Tua, seemed to really like Jonnu Smith as a safety blanket last week against the Bills. He turned 7 targets into 6 catches for 53 yards. If he does that again, yes, you're right, that is a hit. So I do think you're going to see a lot of short yardage targets again, and Smith should hopefully be a beneficiary of that. Coupled with the fact Seattle, they've given up the 6th most points to fancy tight ends so far. I think if you're struggling for a tight end at the minute, Jonnu Smith could be a legit option for the next few weeks, particularly while Tua's out. And I believe he's currently sitting at the tight end 11, which tells you all you need to know about that position. But I don't think he's too much of a reach if you've been struggling.
Yeah, very nice. I like the game they play, and I like what we're doing with tight ends this year. I'm taking a bit of a risk. I'm going Mike Gesicki of the Bengals, projected 7.4. That seems high for tight ends. it says, or it will say on your fantasy app, that tight ends are, that Washington, I should say, who the Bengals are playing this week, are first against fantasy tight ends. But don't be fooled. They played against two teams without a recognised starting tight end with fantasy value. Gesicki has 13 targets so far in the year, which is through the roof in terms of tight ends. And more importantly, it looks like a valuable piece in this offense. It looks like they might be using Gesicki, free Gesicki, as we've all been saying for the past 2 or 3 years. But it looks like he's a valuable piece. Now, am I going to be as excited for Gesicki if T. Higgins is back? No. However, T. Higgins isn't a tight end. There's still going to be tight end value to be had in this team. Gesicki's clearly the go-to guy now. And he wasn't drafted in fantasy this year, which means he might actually score some fantasy points, because we know that those drafted tight ends this year have been absolutely abysmal for you. The Bengals should handle business in this game, even maybe make a statement by putting up a load of points. And yeah, all Gesicki needs is another 3-4 receptions to get above this projection, or to not be a miss. So yeah, let's see who Lewis has got at the tight end position.
Tight end, lads, I'm going Jake Ferguson, Dallas Cowboys, projected 10.8. Again, with the high projections, I'm really going for it this week. I'm being the anti-Alex Sharples. I'm not a bottle job. Jake Ferguson's back. Much needed. I know Luke Schoonmaker filled in pretty well last week for the Cowboys, but Ferguson is the number 2 target on this team. He is an outlet for Dak and also frees up CD Lamb as well. I think the Cowboys do need him quite a bit. And this week, the Cowboys are against Baltimore, who happen to be one of the worst defenses against tight ends so far this year. So I'm plugging in Ferguson to be involved straight away on his return.
Okay, and round us off with your quarterback, Sharps.
I've gone for Gardner Minshew, quarterback for the Raiders, projected 14.3 points against the very stinky Carolina Panthers. Certainly not been a spectacular fantasy start for Minshew, but he's a steady hand. Showed last week that he can find his big targets. Adams and Bowers both having big weeks, as we've already mentioned. I'm a little bit uncertain, though, on the game script for this one. Panthers have been resoundingly trounced both weeks, which generally leads to more running of the ball and less throwing of it. But I'm hoping that the Raiders might have circled this week on the calendar as a statement win to really get momentum going. Additionally, we've talked about Bryce Young being dropped and Andy Dalton coming in. The quarterback change might bring a bit of life into the offense, hopefully put a little bit more pressure on the Raiders to throw it, but obviously we really don't know. At any rate, the Panthers have conceded points this season, and you want pieces going up against them. I'm just hoping that it's going to be Minshew that does the damage. And yeah, as I mentioned, Raiders running backs haven't really been up to much as of yet. I know Zamir White, not that I managed to draft him too much, but I was looking at him quite strongly. I thought this would be a big year for him. It's not been so far. And Alexander Mattison, although he got a touchdown, we sort of know what he is at this point. So yeah, fingers crossed for a bit of Minshew magic this week.
Nice. I'm going to go Sam Darnold of the Vikings, projected 15.7 against Houston. I'm a bit worried about this one. I'm not fully bought into Darnold being a guy who can play football properly yet. But he's been really good this season. There's no question about that. I really, really want him to have Jefferson for this to work, but regardless, there's potential for a shootout here against Houston. Vikings have a nice offense. It's been put together over the past few years, and they can score points. We've seen Richardson already have some success through the air against Houston, as well as Houston allowing teams to hang around against them. So I think this game hits the over, and if it does, then Darnold should be in for another nice game. Think he may even have to run or scramble around against this Houston pass rush, so maybe some fantasy points on the ground for Darnold as well. But who have you got, Lewis?
Quarterback, I'm going Dak Prescott, projected 17.6. Yeah, it's not been a great start for Dallas or Dak Prescott, fantasy-wise. I mean, even in week 1 when the Cowboys looked so dominant against the Browns, Prescott didn't really have a great fantasy day. But I think the game plan is going to be different. This is a Baltimore team who can score points. Dallas can't run the ball. They can't lean on that side of the game. So they're going to have to lean on Dak. Again, another guy who got a contract. Let's make it worthwhile. Let's lean on him. And they're going to use him and CeeDee Lamb in this game to try and build a lead. That's how the Cowboys win these games. They go up and they keep going and keep going and keep going and don't take the foot off the accelerator. Baltimore is a tough defense, but so was the Browns, and the Cowboys didn't really have problems scoring at will against them in week 1. I do have faith in this Dallas offense to get it rolling, get Dak rolling, get CD rolling. As I mentioned in my tight end pick, Ferguson's back. Prescott's only thrown 2 touchdown passes so far this year. I think he doubles that at least in this game. Competitive one, must win for both teams. But yeah, I'm call me a fool. I'm putting faith in Dak Prescott, and that is future Lou signing off. I will say, lads, this has been an awful episode. Just listening to it through the edit, terrible, really bad. I'm never leaving again.
Okay, I think it is terrible of us. Maybe it's terrible of us that none of us have Derek Carr. But, yeah, we'll see.
No one wants to be caught holding the bag on Derek Carr, unfortunately.
Exactly. Let's round off this episode with some game tiers, Sharps. Mm-hmm. What are we looking for this week?
Yeah, I've got quite a lot in the meh category, unfortunately, but we'll start as always with the great ones. I've gone for Saints Eagles. Can't ignore the Saints with the points they've been putting up. Also got Cardinals Lions and the Cowboys Ravens.
Yeah, can you believe the Rams 49ers isn't in that section? Who'd have thought?
Yeah. Moving on to the good. Gone for the Vikings Texans. Falcons and Chiefs. Might fall into meh, but I'm being optimistic. And the Seahawks Dolphins. Now, obviously, it would be better if Tua was playing, but I think there's still plenty of offensive weapons on both sides there for that to be a good game.
Yeah.
Into the mess where I said I've got most of them now. I've gone for the Jets Patriots, the Browns against the Giants, the Titans against the Packers, Colts Bears, Rams Niners, Bills against the Jaguars, and the Bengals against the Commanders.
Does it not already feel like we've seen the Titans versus the Packers like twice already this year?
It does feel like that, yeah.
It feels like that game's already happened. Go on, what's in the...
In the bad, only the 3. Couple where I think it's going to be a blowout, and one which I think is just going to be very run heavy. So Steelers Chargers is in there, Raiders Panthers, and Buccaneers against the Broncos.
Yeah. I mean, personally, outside of Malik Neighbours, I've got no interest in watching the Browns Giants. So that's what I would put in bad. But I mean, look at us talking about games that we wouldn't watch. Football's only just come back. It's week 3. If you're 2-0, congratulations. If you're 1-1, let's get a win this week. If you're 0-2, it isn't over yet. Still a lot of fantasy points to be had. Still a lot of football to play. Thank you very much for listening again. See you later.
See ya.